Okay, class, this is lecture number 9. We're a little bit over 1/3 completed with this semester. You've just had your first examination, and I hope you did well in your first exam. If you did not, still got time to repair with this, folks. We have 2 more examinations plus a final examination. Today we're going to begin a new section here, and we're actually in the center third of the course here, folks. And I will tell you now, I kind of like the first third of the course. It's a lot of fun things to talk about with that. The last third of the course, a lot of fun things to talk about with that. But this middle third of the course, we can get some of these lectures that drag a little bit, and I'm going to do my best here, folks, to keep your interest at the highest most level as possible. So bear with me on these. This is a tough period of time here as we go into 19th century Europe. 19th century Europe, as one person told me. I've never studied a subject that was so more boring than that anyway. But nonetheless, here we're going to be starting a section here which is called the Industrial Revolution. It's going to begin about the year 1780, and it's going to last for about 100 years here, folks. It will begin in England, and it will begin in the northern and central parts of England. In fact, while I have your attention on it here, let me just stop where I have to shift the camera elsewhere. Let me show you where it's going to begin. It's right up in this area here. Like I said, in the northern, the central areas, kind of western, eastern areas here of England, and also the southern parts of Scotland too. And what is it basically? What we're going to see here, we're going to find that new production methods are going to replace the old traditional handcrafted methods with that. And before we go any further with this here, folks, and you can follow in your textbook in chapter 19, before we go any further with this, I want to read to you a statement here, and I would read it in class, and if I do have you in class, you'll hear me read this to you. And it's from Charles Dickens' book, A Tale of Two Cities, and it pretty much describes the way life was in the 19th century, in the 1800s. So let's go over to my document camera here, get our light adjusted properly here, folks. And like I said, it's from The Tale of Two Cities. Not one of my favorite books, by the way. At a more appropriate time, I'll bring it out, bring the book out and show you what the cover jacket looks like. But let's begin this. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, but it was also the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, but it was also the season of darkness. It was a spring of hope. It was a winter of despair. We had everything before us, and we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, and we were all going direct to the other place here. And I'll share another quotation here from Charles Dickens, and I firmly believe this, folks. As bad as times might be, death is nature's remedy for all things. All right, so let's go back into our lecture here, folks. And like I said, I'm on chapter 19, page 621. If you're looking at the portrait on that page there, it just shows you so much the way that Europe was like, around the year of 1830, something on that order. And if you look over at the following page on 623, let me see if I can kind of put this under the camera for you. You can see a typical photograph of English countryside there. Notice the enclosure movement where we have all these pastures that have been rocked in. That's exactly the way it looks like there. We'll be talking very shortly here about wool. Wool is the textile industry is a principal industry that is found in England, even to this very day, as a matter of fact. All right, so let me adjust here my slide here, and we'll pick up a couple of statements here. And as I said, the Industrial Revolution starts 1780, lasts about 100 years. New production methods, new technological changes, and bring about some changes here. A movement, and read this carefully here, folks, a movement from a rural, that's the countryside, handcrafted economy to an urban, machine-driven society here. In other words, we're going to stop manufacturing things by hand, and we're going to let machines do it for us. We're going to have to operate those machines, however. And where this takes place is in Great Britain. Great Britain was blessed with an abundance and quality of goods. They had the best goods and natural resources. Their goods were very good and far better than the other countries of that time, in Europe anyway. Now, let's take a look at a couple of things here. In 1759, over 1/3 of all British exports went to the colonies, and that would include the American colonies. By 1784, over 1/2 of these exports are being sent to the colonies. If you remember in an earlier time, we talked about mercantilism. Under mercantilism, the nation is the principal benefactor, not the individual. It is the nation which is the most important thing here. All right, fewer people in Great Britain had to struggle for survival. More people were in a position to sell their surplus goods that they would grow in the fields there, or if they had excess amounts of wool, you were able to buy goods from the market. People were able to eat white bread and not the brown bread that we previously had talked about here. They also had regularly, they would have meats in their diets here. All right, now let's move on with this. And of particular interest was that of the textiles. Now, the principal textile that they had at that time was wool. We used wool to make cloth, to make fabric with there. And wool sometimes cannot be very, very comfortable, but that was England's #1 industry. Now, you might say, for example, here, well, why don't we bring in cotton? Well, cotton does not grow in Great Britain. And if you bring cotton in from the American colonies, or you bring it in from, say, Africa or Egypt or places such as that, then this competes with the wool industry here. So high tariffs are going to be placed on cotton that is coming in from India or coming in from America or even from Egypt with that. And this is to protect the valuable industry, the woolen industry that we have. So let's move on, and I want you to get familiar with a couple of terms here, friends, because we're going to be using these terms ever so often anyway, and I'm not going to hold you responsible, but you just need to recognize the terms. And these terms are carding, spinning, weaving. Carding, spinning, and weaving. And I want you to kind of memorize these, even though I'm not going to test you on it, so that when we talk about carding wool, you know what I'm talking about. Carding wool is cleaning the wool. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched a sheep being shorn, if you would use that word for it anyway, and have the wool taken from them, but it's a very, very quick process. And this is well worth your time. If you're in Ireland or you're in England and you get the opportunity to go to a sheep herder's place and watch the sheep dogs in action, and they're amazing to watch this, how they will corral the sheep, actually herd the sheep, herd them into a circle there, and they will pair one off, distract one and single it out, and it will be carried over right into the hands of the sheep shearer. And I have to be careful how I say those words here, folks, because I have a tendency to stutter my words. And in a matter of about 45 seconds, that sheep will get a haircut. And I mean, it will look nothing like what it looked like before when the sheepdogs were herding that sheep, because you would just literally remove all the wool in about 45 seconds. Please believe me, I have seen that to take place. But where the sheep are out in the pastures. We pick up a lot of brambles. These brambles get into the fur, and it's just our grasses get into the wool. I don't mean to say fur, into the wool there. And of course, that has to be all cleaned. So if we're going to clean the wool, this means we card it. We card the wool here. Little children can do this. All you have to do is have something like a comb, and you just rake the brambles, rake the straw, the grass out of the wool itself. All right, and then once that is done, then we begin the process called spinning. Spinning means to make the yarn, to make the thread, to make the yarn, to make the thread here. And here we'll have in a typical household, working with a spinning mill or spinning wheel, you'll have husband and wife sitting there working side by side, and they make the yarn. Now notice how this becomes a full family process. The little children, they clean the wool. The husband and wife, they make the yarn. And then the weaving, that's where you make the cloth itself. That's where you're going to make the shirt, or you make the sock, you make the garment, whatever it will be here. And that will be done likewise probably by the husband and the wife. All right, so understand those terms here. We have carding, we have weaving, and we have carding, spinning, and we have weaving. Okay, so let's identify some of these devices associated with this, and I'm going to tell you folks here, I have no clue what I'm talking about. I've watched sheep being shorn, I've watched fabric being made here, but I've never done it myself. I've never operated a spinning wheel. I've seen people do this before, but I just about bet that you're just as ignorant on this subject as I. So anyway, let's try to go through this, and I'll help you out a little bit. And with some of these individuals, you need to be responsible for these individuals too, recognizing their names here. This man's name was John Kay. John Kay developed the fly shuttle. John Kay, by the way, was a clockmaker. What in the world clockmaking and making a fly shuttle has in common, I have no earthly idea. And what I've tried to do for all these devices here, folks, I tried to provide a video, an included video for you, and you can look through those. They're kind of interesting, as a matter of fact, here. And I look through them every year. And let me show you what it looks like here, not the bottom device here. In fact, I'll cover that bottom device. But if you look at the top device, which is up here, this is what a fly shuttle looks like. Sometimes it's referred to as a flying shuttle. That's what it looks like here. And what it will do here, it will speed the process for weaving. Remember what weaving is. Weaving is to make the fabric, to make the cloth itself here. And when you're looking at this upper device here, this fly shuttle, I can assure you, you're no smarter now than you were 1 minute ago here, folks. But nonetheless, that is what it appears as. All right, let's see who else we have to come into focus here. Another individual. And this individual's name is James Hargreaves. James Hargreaves. And James Hargreaves invented the spinning jenny. All right, I think there's a photograph of a spinning jenny in your textbook. You can look at the included video, if you will, here. And by the way, for the spinning jenny, James Hargreaves named it after his wife, so that'd be a good bonus question there. Who is the wife of James Hargreaves? And her name, of course, is Jenny. And this is what it looks like. This is a spinning jenny. You can watch it on the included video there, my friends, but I promise you, you're no smarter now than you were 30 seconds ago with a spinning jenny, nor am I, for that matter. Okay, and let's move on here. And another individual here. And this man, who was a wig maker, by the way, and his name is Richard Cartwright. And Richard Arkwright. And Richard Arkwright developed the water frame. I'm looking around here for a likeness here of a water frame that was powered by water, by the way. This is what it looks like, and you're no smarter now than you were 15 seconds ago, nor am I here, folks. But that's the water frame for you here. All right, like I said, it is powered by water. It improves makes a much stronger, what they call warp, W-A-R-P. It's like a stronger yarn. Shall we continue here, folks? And in 1779, this individual, Samuel Compton, sometimes Crompton, and it all depends on which textbook you observe here, my friends. Sometimes you'll see it as C-R-O-M, sometimes you'll see it C-O-M, and I just wrote it as C-R-O-M-P-T-O-N. Seems like somebody should be able to get that right. And what this is, what he developed, was what was called a spinning mule. All right, and here it is right here, a spinning mule. And it's a hybrid. It combines the features of the spinning jenny and the water frame. It's a mixture of both of those. I think you have an included video on one of the spinning mules found in your included videos there. All right, aren't you having fun with this? This is kind of neat here, folks. All right, so I told you a few minutes ago about cotton. All right, and let me just share a couple things with you here. We all know what cotton is. In fact, I just picked up some of this cotton just a couple of days ago. But you may not be aware that there are actually several types of cotton, and I stole this from some cotton farmer's field. But it looked like he didn't need it. He had about 100 acres of cotton, and I just stopped my car and grabbed a handful of it right there off, well, actually, that's off one of the plants itself. All right, so this type of cotton that you're looking at is not very good cotton to work with. We have another type of cotton, which is found in the United States. It's found over in South Carolina, and this type of cotton is called Sea Island cotton. It's very good cotton, as a matter of fact here. Its limitations, it only grows in a small area. It has wonderful fibers. It's very soft. Expensive gentlemen's shirts are made out of that Sea Island cotton, or long staple cotton is what it is referred to as, but we can't grow enough of it for it to be cost effective, and it's very, very expensive. And then we have this type of cotton that I have right here, and this type of cotton is called green seeds cotton. Sometimes it's referred to as short staple cotton. It is not very fun to work with. It grows throughout the South. It's easy to grow, but it's not good to work with. It has short fibers, such as what you're seeing right here. It has these gosh awful seeds that are present, and I'm trying to peel one of these seeds out right now, and I'm going to work my grubby little fingers to the bones here, folks. And I got one seed out, and then I'm going, here's another seed that's present. It's got seeds all through this green staple cotton. It's not fun to work with. My fingers and thumbs are already sore here, folks, and lo and behold, I'm going to have to use my teeth on this, and lo and behold, I got another seed out. And you know something? I could sit here all day, 12 hours all day, work my grubby little fingers to the bone, and I can de-seed 1 pound of cotton. It is junk. It is junk. Just like Mike Lindell says, get that out of here. And it's not good. But what if we could develop a machine that would actually remove those seeds from short staple cotton? And if we did that, then we would be able to make this cost productive. And sure enough, the individual that's going to do that is an individual, and you all know his name, an individual, a Connecticut Yankee by the name of Eli Whitney. And he developed his cotton gin. And here's what the cotton gin work looks like here, folks. And it's a machine, by the way. And what I can do here, I can take the cotton, make sure I get it into the right area here, and I can take the cotton, I can place it over here in the hopper. I guess it would be over on this side here. And then notice a little lever that pulls, and now I can pull the lever, and by pulling the lever, I can take the cotton bolt that's present here, and I can pull it through these little wires. It's like teeth on a comb here, and it will literally strip the seeds out of the cotton. Then I can take the lever and pull the lever back like this, and it will rake all of the seeds out to the side so it doesn't foul the system up. And with this use of the cotton gin, or engine is what Eli Whitney called it, the cotton engine, I can now de-seed 50 pounds of cotton a day. And by de-seeding 50 pounds of cotton a day, this makes this type of cotton here, it makes it cost productive here. And it's going to change everything here. When did Eli Whitney made the statement, get your cotton picking hands off my gin? That was pretty dumb here, folks. All right, so anyway, so that is going to change things here, folks, as far as cotton production. All right, so let's move on here. Well, what we're going to find here is that largely that spinning and carding will be done in the home. And weaving will likewise be done at home. Later we'll have the development of spinning mills in which a man and woman, a husband and wife can actually work in that mill there. But we're going to find that weaving always takes place in the home. That is until the production of the power loom. And the power loom was produced first in 1784 by Edmund Cartwright. There's a video included for you to watch here, folks, and it's kind of interesting here. Some hokey guy up there trying to demonstrate how to use that. A lot of jerking, by the way, to the machinery there, and I have to tell you, folks, that cotton, you would think that cotton would not be as strong as wool, but cotton is stronger than wool. It actually is here, folks. Wool has a tendency to pull apart with all the jerking that's taking place within the machines of that time. So anyway, it is Edmund Cartwright that develops the power loom. Okay, shall we move right along here, folks, and see what else we have as we move through this Industrial Revolution. Now, for England is well blessed with adequate quantities of coal. Iron. We're going to get into coal in just a few seconds. For Great Britain in 1814, they were exporting 571,000 tons of iron. That is out of Great Britain to other areas of the world. By 1852, Great Britain was exporting 1,036,000 tons of iron out of Great Britain. Great Britain is so far ahead of the other European countries here, folks, it is just not even funny. All right, now coal, that I mentioned just a second ago, we'll go back to it for the real time this time, and coal production. Great Britain has adequate and abundant quantities of coal that are present there. You can see it today, just like the United States does here, in those areas that still allow coal to be mined. In 1711, Thomas Newcomen developed a steam engine. And you may wonder, what in the world does a steam engine have to do with coal production? Well, you think of it like this, folks. I'm not talking about surface mining, but mining of coal down into mine shafts that go deep into the Earth's surface. And what happens here, we have a tendency for those mine shafts to accumulate with water. So it makes it very difficult to mine the coal down in the depths there of a coal mine. So what Thomas Newcomen did, he developed a steam engine that would pump the water out of the mine shafts. It just wasn't that effective, though, and it's going to be improved upon, and particularly with a man by the name of James Watt from the University of Glasgow. Glasgow, which is present in Scotland. If you're from Scotland and Glasgow, you're a Glaswegian. And so that's what James Watt is. And so James Watt is going to improve upon the steam engine. Well, what if we could take that steam engine and place it on a machine? Put it on a machine and let that steam engine power the machine so that you could make it work for you here. All right, so anyway, the Industrial Revolution, we'll get back to that in just a second. The Industrial Revolution is going to arrive in Europe around the year 1830. So the Industrial Revolution on the mainland of Europe is going to be about 50 years behind that of Great Britain. And you might wonder why. Well, there's a number of reasons for this, and on the continent itself, not Great Britain, but on the continent itself, they were not blessed with the adequate resources of iron and coal and wool like we had over in Great Britain, so it takes them a while to catch up. And I want you to also think about something else. I've got it written here, folks. Here it is right here. You think about something else. Everybody remember Napoleon? Everybody remember the French Revolution, where we had the French Revolutionary Wars, and then under Napoleon, we had the Napoleonic Wars. So the mainland of Europe is being ravaged by wars. So that means we have armies, and these armies are going through the countryside, they're going through the cities, they're destroying the cities, they destroy the factories that are present there. So it was 50 years later before the Industrial Revolution actually ever catches on in the mainland of Europe itself. The one thing that did flourish in mainland continental Europe were military uniforms, because you had to have wool for those military uniforms for all those soldiers that were out there taking the lives of each other. All right, so anyway, so let's move on and see what else we have here. All right, now, I don't care, and I tell my U.S. history class this also here, folks. You could sit here and manufacture all day, but if you don't have the ability to transport your goods so that you can sell those goods, you're just spinning your wheels with that. It does you no good whatsoever. There has to be adequate means of transportation. So logically, we would think, well, we're going to use roads to transport our goods from town to town or state to state or wherever it is. But if we have to just rutted out roads, this does not provide a very good vehicle, if you will, for transporting your goods. So a number of these European nations are going to improve greatly upon the roads that they have. Crushed rock, hard packed surface roads. It's like a paved road in a way, a primitive paved road. And for Austria during this period of time we're talking about, they added 30,000 miles of roads. And if we look at Belgium, that was from 1830 to 1847, and if you look at Belgium, Belgium will literally double the number of roads that it has. So this causes great improvements in allowing you to transport your goods from point A to point B. Well, what about water transportation? And I'm not talking about ocean, I'm talking about by river transportation. Well, many of the rivers, and there are a jillion rivers that are present in Europe, but many of these rivers need dredging, they have overhanging trees that cover over the rivers, so it's quite difficult, unless you dredge out those rivers, unless you clear the underbrush away from it. And sure enough, that's what we're going to find in France. France will construct 2,000 miles of canals. Many of those are still present there today. I have been told that you can go from the northern parts of France all the way to the southern parts of France throughout a series of canals there. I have never done that myself. All right, so that's a big change. All right, let me tell you about something else here, folks. Let's see here. Did I write this out here? Oh, before we go into the next topic, for the United States, and I don't like to talk about the United States unless you're in my U.S. history course, from 1800 to 1856, the number of road miles in the United States went from 21,000 to 170,000 miles of roads. That's 8 times increase in the number of road miles in the United States. Okay, so let's take a look at something else here. And this is always kind of interesting here with that of railroads. All right, our first railroads came out in about 1825 in the Durham coal fields. Don't make me go back to my map here, folks, but where I pointed to you in Great Britain, where the Industrial Revolution began, that's where the Durham coal fields are today. It's kind of a bland part of Europe, but you can actually drive right through that area. The first railroad that was constructed went from Stockton to Darlington. You can ride through these two little country-type towns if you wish to do so. I want to try to illustrate for you, and I did this just a few minutes ago to try to clarify this a little bit. The first railroads that were constructed were really no more than just a tramway. So if we look at it right here, we have like a parallel set of rails, and we have some cross ties here, and they take a railroad car, not with a locomotive on it, with a railroad car such as this, and then attached to the railroad car was like a rope or a chain, and it would connect to a horse. And so the horse would use a bridle path and would go down here and literally pull the railroad car, the rail car, tram car, if you want to call it that. I hope you're kind of understanding what I'm talking about with that. And that's the first way it was done. It was like a tramway. And then someone came up with the idea, why don't we take a steam engine and place that steam engine on a locomotive and use that locomotive to pull that tram car? And somebody said, well, no, nothing will ever replace a horse here. And they said, well, I think it will. And so they actually had a race in which you took a horse-drawn tram car and a locomotive-drawn tram car, and to see which one could go the fastest, and it was a locomotive that did, and that kind of won the day for it here. So that's the beginning of the first railroad, given credit for developing our first really modern railroad, and you won't think it is modern whatsoever, is a person by the name of George Stephenson. George Stephenson, I think he learned to read at age 17, but George Stephenson developed his Stephenson's rocket. That's what it was referred to as. It would move at an amazing speed of 15 miles per hour. If you're a pretty good runner, you can run that speed. And let me show you what it looks like. Very primitive here, folks. And you can see what it's called, Stephenson's rocket, which is right here. A very primitive type of steam engine. All right, I'll let you look at that for a second. Stephenson's rocket. And that's what it is known as here. Okay, so the number of railroad miles is going to increase as we go through the years here. Here we can see by 1830, there were a few dozen miles of railroads. That's in Europe, by the way. And by 1840, there was 4,500 miles of railroads in Europe. By 1850 in Europe, we had 23,000 miles of railroads. Please believe me, in the United States, we're going to parallel that. In fact, we're going to exceed that. And by 1860 in the United States, we had 60,000 miles of railroads. I didn't write that out for you. And in the United States, by 1900, we had 220,000 miles of railroads that tracked through our country here, folks. And by that time, in 1900, we had 5 transcontinental railroads that would carry passengers and freight all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. All right, so very, very interesting with that. Okay, now Great Britain continued to maintain its dominance in the Industrial Revolution, but we'll find that catching up very, very quickly is France, Germany, Belgium, and not far behind was the United States. The United States will accomplish in 50 years what it required Great Britain 100 years to accomplish in the Industrial Revolution. All right, but you know something, even though we've been talking about the Industrial Revolution, the number one occupation for Americans and Europeans was that of farming. It was agriculture, an agrarian way of life. All right, so let's shift over a different topic here, folks. We're still in that chapter here, but I want to get you acquainted with a couple of terms and just think about these terms for a second. Industrialization and urbanization. Industrialization and urbanization. Industrialization, that's exactly what we've been talking about, the Industrial Revolution. We're going to build factories. We manufacture goods through factories. And urbanization, where these factories are, they're located in cities. So this means that we have to have workers, and these workers are going to come out of the countryside and move from a rural way of life and assume an urban way of life. Industrialization and urbanization. So we get vast numbers of people to move from the countryside and move into the cities. And what you'll find here is husband, wife, 5 children, all working in an industry like a spinning mill. The entire family works together with that, industrialization and urbanization. So what this creates for us, in Europe anyway, it creates a factory system. A factory system. The entire family works within that factory. And it also brings about a big change in the way people perceive themselves. You know your place in society. I know my place in society. And if we're all farmers and we farm 20 acres of land, we're all the same. But if we move to the city, we have many, many walks of life there, folks. You know, you have the factory workers, we have the people in the upper class, the people in the middle class, and you have just a basic poor peasant worker here. So it creates class consciousness, where you recognize where you are in society, good or bad. I don't know, and you know that. You see it today. You recognize it likewise today. Okay, so let's see where we are here, folks. And I'll go here. The population, as I said, was largely peasant and rural, and until people start moving to the cities. So very often what this creates is overpopulation here. Overpopulation. This could sometimes lead to unemployment, poverty. Your textbook will tell you that the average daily diet consisted of 2 to 3 pounds of bread. The average daily diet consisted of about 3,000 calories. And your textbook author makes it appear as if that's bad. But I'm going to tell you, good folks, if you're eating 3,000 calories a day and you're not on a strong exercise program, you know, you're going to be an overweight individual. I almost said something that probably would have been sensitive to some individuals here. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to shift down just a little bit here and show you how European population is going to increase here. European population, by and large, in 1800, it was 205 million. 205 million in 1800. Watch what happens in 1850. European population now 274 million. By 1870, European population is 320 million individuals. So population is largely on the increase here. Now I want to interrupt myself here and tell you about something else. And this is important to me because my family is largely Irish, and my family came from Ireland and Scotland and Wales in the 1800s. We were part of that great immigration that came across here. And in Ireland had introduced into their basic staple diet was potatoes. These potatoes, of course, came from the New World, primarily that of South America anyway. And this would greatly ease the hunger that was present in Ireland. And so Irish potatoes are not native to Ireland by any means. But from 1845 to 1849, the potato blight took place here. And this led to what is referred to as the Great Famine. Vast numbers of individuals just literally starved to death. And what happens here with the potato blight, we get a fungus that infects the developing potato, so the potato does not develop to full maturity. So what it ends up doing, it just literally rots within the ground. So when it actually is taken from the ground, it's nothing but just mush. It's inedible. And as a matter of fact, here during this Great Famine, we had 1 million people that were Irish that actually starved to death. 1.5 million Irish immigrated, with many of those Irish individuals actually coming to the United States here, where they would take up residence in large cities, particularly that of New York. And maybe I told you this at an earlier time, but New York had more Irish than Dublin, Ireland, the capital city of the Republic of Ireland to this very day here. If you go to places such as Cork, you can find statues there, which represents, the mother and the children, or the father and the mother and the children, actually leaving out of Ireland and coming to a better way of life in the United States here. And like I said, that's when my folks, my ancestors, did actually come here. Anyway, and it did affect other parts of Europe here. I think in the Netherlands, a little bit in Germany, but I think your little quiz asks you to identify that of Ireland. All right, so that's another factor here. So let's move on. I want to get back to the cities here, for example, here. And for many of these cities, they will increase in population and dramatic growth here. Let's just take 3 cities, 3 random cities, and this is over a course of 10 years. In London, within a 10-year timeline here, London's population will go up 130,000 individuals. Paris, the population goes up 160,000. and Vienna, and we pronounce it in our country as Vienna. If you go to Austria today, it's pronounced as Vin. Don't get it confused with V-E-I-N. That's wine, by the way. So Vin and vine, two different subjects here. And anyway, the population increases by 125,000. In Berlin, the population increased by 180,000. So we do get an increase in the population of those areas here. All right, so moving on here, folks. And let's see how we're moving along with this. And I want to make sure I got all my slides covered there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the various groups that we find in society here, particularly that of the working class and the middle class individual. And I'm going to address my focus here on middle class today here, folks, primarily. And when we come back for our next lecture, we'll pick up that on working class for a few minutes here. And the movement from working class to middle class was very difficult. It was very challenging. And for you to move from a working class individual to a middle class individual, it required education. Education was something that was in most places very expensive here, and it was difficult to attain. Education was primarily for middle class individuals. You might go to a private academy, private school. For middle class girls, you're educated by private tutors or your brothers, if you will. Maybe even your dads if you had time to do that, which he probably did not. So movement from working class to middle class was just about impossible. And the movement, I didn't write this for you, but movement from middle class to aristocracy was equally as challenging as moving from working class to middle class. Let's see if I wrote this out for you here, and I did write this out. And generally for the middle class, that's what we're talking about, it was much easier to move from, and these are my words here, folks, these are not in your textbook, it was much easier to go from lower middle class, and over a generation or two, and acquiring a little bit of additional wealth, you could then move from lower middle class to middle class. These are my words. And maybe over another generation or two, you might be able to move up to upper middle class. So I've broken down this middle class into lower middle class, middle class, and upper middle class. And it may take several generations to work your way up. And by and large, you're probably stuck in upper middle class, and you're not going to go any further than that, too. All righty. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the women of the time here. And let me see here with women of the time. I'm looking for a couple of names here. And in fact, I placed those names in front of you good folks there. Some of the prominent women of the time here. We have Florence Nightingale, and I'm going to show you a likeness of these individuals. So let me just mention the others here. George Sand, and George Sand was French. These are women, by the way. Queen Victoria, 1837 to 1901. And I'll come back to Queen Victoria in a second, but I want to show you what she looks like. Here's what she looked like at a young age anyway. She was queen for 23,225 days. I'll come back again to Queen Victoria in just a few minutes. Here she is right here at a very young age here. And there she is with her husband, by the way, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg. Two other ladies here. Florence Nightingale, here she is in the center here, who distinguished herself as a battlefield nurse in the Crimean War. And we'll be on the Crimean War in about 2 lectures here, folks. I'm not quite ready to do that yet. This lady here, George Sand, she was a female novelist. She's French, by the way. George Sand, she always, not in this portrait here, but she always dressed like a man. She smoked cigars in public here. And she was always, like I said, she was a novelist. She was writing these books about the independent woman that had the unhappy marriage here. All right, but I want to go back to Queen Victoria for a second here. And she's a quite interesting individual. Like I said, you can see her. Here she is right there. But she was responsible for bringing out this Victorian sexuality. I'll share a quotation with you from Queen Victoria. Childbirth is the shadow side of marriage. And middle-class wives, the better half, so to speak, were indoctrinated from birth with the belief that the only way that they were superior to their husbands was in one way, to remain the pure and untainted vestal of the hearth, untouched by sexual desires that are experienced by her animal husband. She must never equal her husband's sexual appetite. All right. People at that time, honest to goodness here, my friends, would take piano legs, curved piano legs or curved chair legs, and would cover those because they were afraid that it would evoke some type of sexual emotion from an individual to look at the curvature to a piano leg. I'm not making that up here, folks. European laws tolerated a husband's infidelity, and he had a right to his wife's body and to her property at any time. On the other hand, if we had an unfaithful wife, she lost her property, lost custody of the children, and in many cases was divorced and was just humiliated in the eyes of the public. And that's just the way that it was here. Contraception was not a common practice at that time, which meant that sexual intercourse would lead to pregnancy. Our next time that we get together, I'll give you some detailed figures on that here, folks, but it is absolutely remarkable. One woman reminded her daughter, the daughter was on her wedding night, that on her honeymoon night, just lie back and think of the nation. For the middle class, when they would go on vacation, just like you good folks, and I'm going to try to shake that out of you, but like you good folks, they would take vacations and they would go to the mountains or they would go to the beaches. There are many, many other places in our great country and other parts of the world here, folks, to visit other than the mountains and the beaches. Nice place to live here, folks. Nice place to live, but it is not the only places in the world. Oh, here's my slide that I was looking for just a few seconds ago. All right, now I want to show you something here about middle-class housing. And in middle-class housing, and by the way, the husband was master. The husband was master and lord over the house, if you will. He sat at the head of the table. The daughters, the wife, were secondary to the husband here and to the father there. The mother was really, the wife was more like a helpmate more than anything else. It was an image, a status for the middle class people for the type of house that you had. I don't draw very well, as you folks well know this, but the houses for the middle class were all decorated lavishly to demonstrate your wealth, kind of like what we do in our society today here, folks. Unfortunately, we have to show the other people how much wealth we have, how much affluence that we do have. All right, but in a middle class house, what I try to draw for you here, folks, this is a single family dwelling. And if you go to London today, you'll see just streets and streets and streets full of houses just like this that date all the way back here to the 19th century. Now, I'm going to say what I said one more time here. This is a single family dwelling. We have one family that's living in this house. And so what we end up having here, we may have a sitting room and a living room and a kitchen and a dining room and a couple of bedrooms or 3 or 4 bedrooms, but one family lives within the confines of that house. And that is for the middle class here. Now, I'm going to be shortly, not today, but shortly talking about the working class. And we're going to see that their housing changes considerably here, folks. All righty. So anyway, I've gotten you into this section here, folks, on the Industrial Revolution, and just one aspect of the Industrial Revolution, which took part here in 19th century Europe. And when we return, the next time we get together here, folks, we're going to talk about the working class and the trials and tribulations that these working class people had, and trying to move from that of an unskilled labor to move to be a skilled labor, which is going to require education, which is difficult to get. Okay, thank you very much.